Welcome back. Goodman versus Gottlieb, Tuesday afternoon. Remember, scan that QR code. You can also send in your questions, your comments, anything you want to us, and we'll try to get to your questions throughout the week. We're on every Monday through Friday, 1 to 1:30 Eastern time. And last night was not a big night in college hoops. A couple big boy games. First one, North Carolina took down Wake Forest in a game that the Tar Heels were down at half, 1 point, came back, absolutely blew out Wake in the second half. R.J. Davis goes for a career-high 36 points, which is 4 short of Tyler Hansborough's Smith Dean Dome record. And he was and has played unbelievable throughout the entire season, playing like an All-American. R.J. Davis, you got Cormac Ryan starting to come on a little bit. Harrison Ingram had 14 boards. Armando Bacot hasn't had to be great this year because he's surrounded by a lot of really good players, and we'll get into that later. But Elliot Cadeau, a guy that Doug has talked about all season long, a reclassified freshman, has been an absolute difference maker for the Tar Heels because of his ability to make people better, to push the pace. And that's one of the things that Carolina is doing differently this year than they were last year. They were kind of trying to play half-court game, and they weren't getting a lot of points in transition, which was a trademark of this program for so long under Roy Williams. And they really hadn't gotten a lot last year of easy baskets. Well, this year, Elliot Cadeau is, again, getting them those easy baskets. R.J. Davis is playing off the ball, which is far more effective for him. And, again, it just takes more pressure off guys like Bacot. Now they move the ball. R.J. Davis is clearly the go-to guy when the game's on the line, but there are other guys that can make shots, make plays. Cormac Ryan will shoot the ball better. Again, Harrison Ingram is a guy who's certainly gotten better as he's gotten more comfortable and was pretty good from the outset because he's a tough matchup. But, you know, Carolina's a team right now, Doug, that has put themselves in the discussion as one of the national title contenders. I'm not saying they're going to win 6 straight, but you're not going to be surprised if this Carolina team shows up in Phoenix for the Final Four this year, are you?
No. They're not perfect, but no one is, right? And what you point out about R.J. Davis is, yeah, he's the guy on the perimeter who you feel like on a given night can give you 30, and you need that to advance in the NCAA tournament, right? You need a guy, hey, just carry us while we're struggling. So the two differences, though, actually probably 3. One, obviously the ball movement. And I would tell you Elliot Cadeau is playing progressively better, a little bit more aggressive offensively, but he's just such a good ball mover. The pace is there. He really is a lot like so many of the Roy Williams point guards that weren't score first, they're pass first. If you can go back to Dean Smith, that's how Cadeau plays. That's why it works. Also, you know, you have the reputation of Cormac Ryan has not had a great year shooting the basketball, but everyone knows he can shoot the basketball.
That's right.
So yeah, he can shoot. RJ can shoot, but also a very good slasher. You throw out there Harrison Ingram who can shoot, and the floor is spaced so much better. And you really only have one guy who's trying to get in the lane. Last year, they had multiple guys trying to get in the lane and kind of fighting over the ball. So spacing's better, pace is better, and the whole kind of setup. And then the last part, and again, if you're watching the show for the first time, just know we've been tracking. This team's been elite defensively. That's the difference. And if you look back historically, when Coach Williams was there, they were always great offensively. And it wasn't until February or March where they really the championship teams started to grind defensively. This one's been different. For the most part, the defense has been there, top 5 in adjusted defensive efficiency in the country. So the defense has been there all year. The offense has at times been sporadic, but you can see it starting to come together. And I think as much as you can focus on R.J. Davis, Cadeau looking to shoot and score the basketball is what's going to open it up more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, again, they're a team that they don't have a ton of depth, of quality depth, although Jalen Withers has been better the last couple of weeks, and Seth Trimble gives them a good defender off the bench. They probably go 7.5 right now. They could use a little bit more from Jalen Washington coming off the bench. But again, they have it. It's not like they don't have guys that are capable coming off the bench. In those starting 5, Doug, what I think is super important here is they kind of all know their roles right now. Like, I think everybody understands, okay, RJ's our dude. Where last year, I think it was like Caleb wanted to be the dude, but it was hard because you couldn't rely on him.
Baycott as well. Remember, it wasn't just like, I thought Baycott was, he's a really good college player. Yes. He is. And I will credit him with, he came back, and it's not like he's trying to show people he can go Al Horford and stretch his range. He's playing within his role. Okay, but last year you had all three of them kind of fighting for the same, and then you had, I don't think that Nance was as good as Harris Ingram, right? And that's that's really hard. And they couldn't really play small ball the way they did the year before with Brady Manick. So it just wasn't a perfect team. This one's not perfect, but it fits together way better. And I think I'm most impressed by the fact that the defense has carried them and the offense is coming along.
Well, it's funny. When I talked to Hubert Davis in the preseason for a while, and then I talked to RJ and Baycott too, they all just stress defense. And really, that's what Hubert was saying about RJ. Was like, hey, we know he can score, but like he's got a guard. He's got a guard. We can't have those two small guards, because at that time you knew it was going to be Cadeau and RJ. And he was like, I know we got those two small guards. RJ's got to be somebody that's not a defensive liability because of his size, and he really hasn't been. It's scoring, which is obviously what he's done the best, but he's been probably above that. It's kind of like Steph Curry got, right? Like Steph was such a liability when he first came into the NBA defensively, and I think he got to a point where, again, he wasn't a liability. That's all you got to be. If you're Steph Curry, if you're scoring 25 a game like RJ Davis, don't be a liability on the defensive end.
You got to be tough, and you have to show some effort. And it's interesting because, I think you look at Trae Young, and he's as talented an offensive player as there is in college, when he was in college basketball or in the pros. But, you got to be revered as being the best scorer. You can't just take all the big shots and not go and earn at the defensive end. And I don't think it's as much about guarding. It's more about toughness, right? You're big on the little guard thing. Like, it's not really a thing in college basketball unless your guards aren't tough, right? That's really what it kind of comes down to. You're going to be 6'1", 6'2", and below, and into the you better be tougher than a $2 steak. And I think Cadeau is quietly very tough, even as a freshman. Yes. And I think RJ has raised his level. And I think a lot of that comes from, Cormac Ryan's a very smart positional defender with some toughness. Ingram's been really well coached defensively from his time at Stanford. They got little tougher guys. Carolina has a reputation. As they want to play fast. Tough. They're not tough at all. This team is tough. And I would say that a lot of it comes from those two guys sustaining all those blows last year to their ego because they so massively underachieved based upon all of our predictions.
Those two, and then you add in two more, and Harrison Ingram and Cormac Ryan, who did not win a lot of games. So they've all got something to prove because they've heard the skepticism, the criticism, and they've really responded to that. All right, the other big game last night, Douglas, was at Fog Allen, where Kansas barely beat Cincinnati at home. Kansas was coming off that loss at West Virginia. You thought they'd come in and they would blow out Wes Miller and the Bearcats. They did not. Now, again, I said this to you the other day. I will take losses right now for Johnny Furphy to keep getting better. Well, they didn't have a loss last night, but Johnny Furphy, 23 points, 11 rebounds. And you know what he did? He showed some toughness. He's only about 180 pounds, but he showed he wanted to get up in there and mix it up on the glass. He hit the offensive boards. Now, he still can't guard a high level because people can push him around. But again, if he can give him 23 and 11, I don't really care because offensively he can space the court, take the pressure off, and they can outscore some people where you looked at it before and you're like, all right, they got Hunter, they got McCullough, and what else do they really have offensively? Those two guys had to kind of carry him. Now you got a third guy that can help out.
No question. And, when I'll just tell you, when they prepped when Oklahoma State prepared for them last week, they were like, it's really like you got to guard four guys. And then Furphy gets a dunk to start the game. He goes 5 for 5. It was never a competitive game because now you're like, how do we guard him? And for last night, I thought Cincinnati, they did some really good things, especially defensively, and really limited Hunter Dickinson. They're the first team to really limit getting on that right shoulder, pushing him off the block, being able to get the ball out of his hands and make somebody else beat you, and McCullough didn't shoot well. So Furphy to jump up, knock down shots. You and I were there in Chicago. And look, again, college coaches tell people all the time, like, look, our team's going to change, kids evolve. But Furphy looked honestly like he didn't belong. Like, man, this is a lot. And then you would think when you get to conference play, no matter how much he had played and developed into the sophomore, especially in Big 12 conference play, you have so many transfers and older players that it would get increasingly difficult with the physicality and the age of players. But he's actually played better. So I think that was a big game for KU. There's not a lot of games they're going to dominate because they just don't have a lot of depth. But they're going to wear you out, and they showed last night that they can beat a good team, even if Hunter Dickinson doesn't put up a double-double. That was actually really, really impressive. McCullough didn't shoot well, and Dickinson has 10 points, and they still win. That's a heck of a win.
It is. I'm still a little bit concerned that they didn't blow them out at home. But, yes, a win's a win, and Kansas – they're going to stack wins. We know that, and they're probably still going to win the Big 12 regular season title. All right, we got a viewer question, Doug. Yep. And the question is this. Who do you think will win the national championship this year? Please don't say North Carolina.
Hi, my name's John. I have one question for you guys. Who do you think is going to win the national championship this year? Please don't say North Carolina. Have a great day.
There's your guy, Doug.
We think snow day? We got a snow day working there? Is that what we got?
I don't know. Well, maybe. It's been snowing everywhere.
Okay, if I'm going to pick, I'm going to roll with Kentucky. Kentucky. Why not? Right?
I'm going to tell Cal, hey, when I see Cal tonight, I'm going to tell him that you put the kiss of death on him. That you said that Kentucky's going to win the whole thing.
Because yesterday when I waxed poetic about Kentucky, you had Big Blue Nation be like, why didn't you support Duke? Like, listen, wrong white guy. That's Seth Davis, okay? Seth Davis. Wrong white guy, okay? Anyway.
Hey, Seth's got way more hair than you. I don't know how they could confuse the two of you. He's got way more hair than you.
Cool. Yeah, okay. I didn't know. I didn't know I was here for the hair jokes. So I mean, like, it's all right. Like, it's not that bad. He does have better. He has definitely has better hair. So the reason I would pick Kentucky is, like, I could go through and pick against everybody, and probably the most complete team I feel like would be Purdue, right? But in order to beat Purdue, sure, I think you have to be really athletic in your backcourt, and you got to be able to have a depth of bodies, and you got to be able to stretch out Zach Edey inside. And I think with the emergence of Big Z, and, like, look, it's a very small sample size, but a blind man can see, like, okay, the kid obviously has got a body and it's got some skill. I would assume, based upon coming from that part of the country, that usually those dudes are tough. So I'm going to take Kentucky. I just think their guards, Dillingham is in the perfect role for him. They got 3 freshmen, and only 2 of them have to play well. You got Reeves, who I think can carry them in a game. Now you have some depth in your front court. And I do think that Cal, it's not about his motivation, but, like, look, dude, he goes from 2 consecutive years of real disappointment to now kind of sneaking up on people. This is the perfect John Calipari setup. And the big thing is the field. I think UConn would be my other pick. But the field just isn't as strong. I think there's there's more really good teams that could win it. But I don't think there's any team, I'd have to go and jog my memory, that has 2 guys, let alone 3, that'll be lottery picks other than Kentucky. I think they have more talent than people, and then they have some age to go with it.
Yeah, I'm going to go UConn. I'm going to go back-to-back for the first time since 06-07 when Florida and Billy Donovan did it. I think they have all the pieces. If Donovan Klingon can get healthy and stay healthy, I just don't know how many teams can match up with them. And I think Dan Hurley is one of the best coaches in the game right now. So
what's interesting, and it should be pointed out, it's a lot like we were talking with about North Carolina and Hubert. and the fact that it's a defensive-oriented team. Danny's teams, when he was at Rhode Island, and previous to that, whether he was in high school or he was at Wagner, like they always played their tails off defensively. But his evolution as an offensive coach is what's really impressive. Like their offensive stuff and their movement that their staff has come up with and put together and their execution of it is elite. Elite. So they have all the other things that make a great team. Toughness, depth, they got shooting, they got rim protecting when they have clinging in, they got versatile bigs, they have experience winning in the tournament, but they're also a very clean and beautifully coached offensive team. And that's different than some of his other teams that were more, hey, we're just going to beat the crap out of you because we're tougher than you.
Very impressive. Next up, Goodman versus Gottlieb. We're going to break down some of the good and the bad in some of the other top leagues. Next. All right, big day in the history of volleyball. The Pro Volleyball Federation begins its inaugural season Wednesday, and you can watch it right here on Stadium. It's the Atlanta Vibe taking on the Omaha Supernovas. That's Wednesday, January 24th at 8 p.m. right here on Stadium. All right, Doug, the Tony Stubblefield era is over officially at DePaul. I know you're sad about that. Not a great hire by Dwayne Peavy a couple years ago as an assistant from Oregon. Didn't get it done at DePaul. He's not the only one. I don't think you're going to be in favor of Dave Leto 3.0 here. But Tony Stubblefield is out, and now Dwayne Peavy is going to try to get a big boy. You know, I don't know how much money he's going to have to work with, I think he's hoping to get $3 million a year. I don't know if he's going to get to that point. First of all, can they get a big boy? I'm going to give you a couple names. All right, here are the names, the big boy names that I would call first and make them say no, which I think they'll all say no. Ready? Tell me if any of these guys you think has any shot of leaving their current spots. Dusty May, Chris Beard, Porter Moser, Buzz Williams, Chris Jans, Richard Pitino. Any of those 6 have any chance of leaving their current spots for DePaul?
Jans would be the only maybe, but they have so much more money there. Porter, I think, would, everyone knows Porter's dream would be to be back at Creighton where he played. And he had great success in Chicago. And it's not necessarily a perfect fit how he wants to coach in the SEC going to next year. But I don't think – look, here's what's at issue, okay? I actually don't think the Tony Stubblefield idea would be a bad one, a guy who is a noted tremendous recruiter. You got to have dudes. But
Sure.
You can't have dudes without NIL. Like, you're working backwards. You're worried about getting a big-name coach. Like, that doesn't really do it. Big money does it. You have to have money to play this game. Okay, you have to have in the neighborhood of $2 million if you want to build an NCAA tournament.
That's why they did this now, Doug. That's why Dwayne Peavy made the move now, because he couldn't raise any money with Stubbs as the head coach, saying we have a chance now to go to people and say, hey, we're getting a new coach. Help us out. Let's see what we can put together for a package for the new coach.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the mid-major is the better route. And the reason is twofold. One, because there is some old school recruiting that does take place, right? You have to recruit the region, and you have to recruit these kids and then bring them back home to the Chicagoland area, right? You've got to bounce back recruit. But you also are going to have to pluck off some of the best kids from the Valley and the MAC and the Horizon, okay, and pay them at a rate above what the Horizon can pay them and bring them up, and your eval having coached. And that's why, like, Brian Wardle to me makes sense. The Marquette job's not coming open anytime soon. He's a Marquette alum. He recruited Chicago well at Bradley now, or when he was at UW Green Bay. Like, that one makes a whole lot of sense, What's his name? Why am I forgetting it? Who played at Southern Illinois, is the coach of Southern Illinois. He almost left.
Brian Mullins,
right? I mean, how about Brian Mullins loses, a starter to Illinois, who's awesome, and a starter to Purdue. And now he still has the nation's leading scorer, but he thought about leaving because it's so hard to compete at Southern Illinois. Well, okay, now we'll give you a bag. And if you give him the right money, like, that guy can really coach.
And
again,
his dad,
whoever you hire,
Doug, his dad runs the Illinois Wolves program too, AAU program, which has some decent players as well. So that doesn't hurt. I'm with you. Josh Schertz, Indiana State, has done a great job.
Yes. I mean, all three of those. I'm more, Mullins, remember he was at Loyola Chicago. Okay. So he's obviously spent time there. And like I said, Wardle is a little bit more tied into Chicago than Schertz is. But those guys, that's what you need. You need that, and you need NIL, and you need support. I mean, like, look, it's screwy. They built a beautiful arena, but it's way too far from campus. So, they don't have a big enough following. You're going to have to do it with dudes and win, and then they'll show up some, and then you have a chance to compete in the Big East.
All right, let's go to our buzzer beaters, and the first game is the one I'll be at tonight. Big Z with his second career. Do you know how excited I am for this, Doug? To drive down from Charleston to Columbia to see if Big Z was, if this was an aberration, or this is going to be something we're going to see over and over from Big Z. They play at South Carolina tonight. I think they're 5.5-point favorites. This is a big game for the Gamecocks. Huge game, because if they win this one, Doug, we're going to be talking about the Gamecocks as a legitimate NCAA tournament caliber potential team. Who do you got?
South Carolina. This is the perfect setup. I just waxed poetic for 2 days. Like, everybody in Kentucky knows, like, this is a trap game. We're walking into this one. You just feel it, right? You're so hyped. You're so happy. You got a bunch of young guys. You go down there, and Jesse James and the boys reffing the game. I'm going to take South Carolina Gamecocks tonight.
All right, I'm sticking with Kentucky. I'm rolling with the Cats on this one. I think they're going to go in with Big Z leading the way. And listen, they just got too much. As you said earlier in the show, they got too much. All right, the best game of the night is actually in Provo. It's number 4 Houston at BYU. And again, a huge one for BYU to protect their home court, and it's very difficult to win there. But Houston's coming off a game where they held UCF to like 15 points. I mean, their defense was insane in that game. Can BYU, not can, because I know what you say to Ken questions, will BYU beat Houston?
Yes, I think they will. I just, it's one of those shoot or shoot. And this is a team that, they have lost at home now. I mean, Cincinnati beat them at their place. They took 46 threes. But I think just volume of depth of threes against Houston. I don't know if Houston can score with them. I think this is a matchup thing where I feel like they'll spread Houston's incredibly tough interior defense out. I'm going to take BYU in what'll be an upset, not because of the rankings, but because Vegas thinks Houston's going to win.
I'm going with the road team again. I'm going with the Cougars. I think they got their mojo back. And again, yes, if BYU shoots 40% from three, Houston will go down. I don't think BYU is going to do that from three. Last big game, Texas at Oklahoma tonight. Longhorns fresh off their upset of number 9 Baylor. Do they get a road win in Norman?
No. Oklahoma's good, and this is a great matchup, right? You have Javion McCullum going against Max Asmus as two kind of combo guards. I think Texas has more talent, but Oklahoma is a really cohesive group. And, I think OU in a close one.
Yeah, I'm finally going to go with the home team here. I'm with you on this one. I'm taking Oklahoma. Can't wait to see Big Z. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Stadium, Goodman versus Gottlieb.